So this is Agonist, which is a stereo drive patch that I built that uses nothing but native modules. It doesn't use any of the overdrive or distortion or fuzz modules to create its sound. It just uses VCAs being clipped a bunch going into filters. And on the front panel, you have controls for those filters. There's a high pass filter with a Q, and there's a gain control. There's a mid-band filter, which you can set to positive or negative gain, and then a low pass filter with its own Q and the volume amount. It can get pretty loud if you want it to. I sort of figure with a gain patch, that's something you'd like. The other feature that it has is a preset that you can store. So if I switch back to this setting called live and start messing around with the controls, let's take the mid gain down and lower the high pass frequency and up the gain a little bit. And let's So we can set a live setting and just manipulate the parameters as we want, and then go to a saved preset. If we change the knobs now, nothing happens. If we change the knobs now, nothing happens. And if we're messing around with a live setting that we like, we can use this button here called write to write it to the preset slot. So, it's probably not the sort of presets that you might use in every circumstance, but you can select between them using these push buttons or these two stomp switches. Then the third option is to modulate between the two settings. So we can see, or maybe not, I don't know, let me try and get some shadow here. These lights, these pixels that indicate the setting of the patch are useful for one, when you're setting up one of the presets to see what it does. The pixels will give you some indication. If they're really bright, that means that parameter is pretty high. If they're pretty dim, pretty low. But you can also see them modulate now. I didn't really have CPU or room. You might notice that the CPU has jumped up to 100% because we're using multi-filters. And multi-filters do not like being modulated. But I've got an LFO going here. If we turn this up, and you might notice the modulation inverts when I switch from one or the other preset. So I set this switch here. You can select channel 1 is an expression pedal. I don't have my expression pedal plugged in, but it goes into channel 1. And then channel 3 is an envelope follower, which I thought would be more impressive than it is. Maybe it needs to be boosted some. So that's the other sort of neat feature about this is you've got a live setting and then a preset that you can store, and then you can modulate between them. You can turn the modulation on and off with this stomp switch or with this push button. Everything's sort of set up to be used with stomp switches or push buttons. And it's also stereo. I didn't mention that. If you just want to use it mono, you can save a lot of CPU by just cutting out one of these channels. The inputs come in here, and then the only stereo module is the level control, which is a VCA. So you change that to a mono. But this is partly proof of concept, but also with all the filtering and resonance that you can get some really sort of strange fuzzes and drives and that sort of thing. So I think it sounds pretty good as a drive patch too. It's very digital, but not in a bad way, in a really flexible, weird way. And at the same time, it's sort of like a proof of concept. If you want to dive into creating your own overdrives, you might look at the structure of this or think about, where you want to place filtering. I did explore some other options that were a little bit tamer. The order right now is that I'll just go into it. Audio comes into the high pass filter here. So, with like a low resonance, you can use that to sort of cut out some low end mud. But with a high resonance, it creates a peak and adds a lot of low end gain. And that's sort of the fun of the filtering, is that you can use it both to, ameliorate things, but also to make them much worse or better, depending on your perspective. And then it goes into a VCA. That connection is boosted, I think, yeah. A stereo VCA, the output of channel 1 goes into the input of channel 2 and is boosted. The output of channel 2 goes into our mid-band filter. And then that goes into another VCA, which again, everything's boosted at these stages, then into a low pass filter. And again, with the cues and the frequencies and everything, you can get a lot of really weird textures out of these configurations. I did experiment with putting all of the VCA gain prior to the mid parametric filter, and that made it mellower. I wasn't going for mellow. I was going for something else entirely. But like I said, you can explore different configurations or where you put filtering, and it will have an effect on the overall patch. And again, this seems like a lot of CPU because of the modulation. When it's just resting, it sits at 47%, but modulating those multi-filters just gets you into a lot of CPU spikes because of the way that they process audio. And then, if you wanted to do this in mono, this whole part, the actual drive part, probably takes up under 20% CPU. So, it's something that maybe you want to experiment or just try out this weird patch. Like I said, you can get a lot of really weird filtered sounds from it. maybe you're into that. But yeah, that's Agonist. Have a good day, and I hope you enjoy it if you check it out.